Hey everybody, welcome to another great episode of Content Conversation. Today I'm happy to be welcoming John-Henry
Scherck like jerk.
Scherck like jerk, okay. John-Henry Scherck to the Hey everyone, welcome to another great episode of Content and Conversation. Today I'm excited to be welcoming John-Henry Scherck to the program. John-Henry is a really smart content marketer and content strategist. He's now a consultant working with B2B companies, primarily in software and different industries like that, many of which you've heard of that we'll get into in this program. So excited to have you on, John-Henry.
Awesome. Really excited to be here, Ross.
Yeah. One place that I thought would be worth starting off on is your expertise in just full funnel marketing for these SaaS companies. Obviously, it's not a simplistic thing, especially in SaaS, to take someone from the top funnel to the bottom funnel. So I'm curious if you have any specific tips on how to pull people from the top to the bottom for companies through content marketing.
Totally. That's a great question. I think the best way to phrase it is something I like to call blending intent. And that's, when someone is searching for just like that broad head term, like cloud computing or chaos engineering, they're essentially asking like, what is this topic? What should I know about it? And you can use things like internal links to push people to deeper articles that are gonna take them from like awareness to interest. I also like, getting more product-based stuff in those what is articles that can actually send them to things if they're gonna essentially like raise their hand and say like, I'm ready to learn about a product or like a type of solution, that'll send them there. Also then like white paper downloads and forms or links to webinars, anything that you can use to grab an email where someone can essentially say, I have a little bit more interest, pushing them to a different page, a deeper page, allows you to take it away from just like, I just wanted a definition to I'm interested in this solution.
So I know a lot of your offering and what you help companies with is kind of is like a big topic cluster model. How does that relate to that process? Like, how are you thinking about that to think of the funnel? And are you thinking like this whole topic cluster, and maybe you could quickly define what a topic cluster is for people as well, helps them get to the purchase stage?
Totally. So just to define a topic cluster, it's an interconnected, topically related section of a website. So say you were doing cloud computing, you would want to have an article about like what is cloud computing, and that would sit in the center of the cluster. And then you would link to subtopics that are on other URLs, so like the benefits of cloud computing, tips for cloud computing, the dangers of cloud computing. And from what I've seen, when any part of that topically related cluster gets links, it's a rising tide raises all ships scenario, so the whole thing starts to do better. And also from what I've seen, when you look at the sites like eHow or WikiHow, those like live strong sites that were like one really thin article that you like read and then you'd bounce. And like I don't think Google wants to send people to those types of articles. I think they want deep experiences, and that's why they're looking for topical authority. So I try and help clients build topical authority, but I think if you're just like going after keywords, you might like put up numbers and get traffic and get links, but I try and help clients map individual pieces of content to different stages of the purchase journey. So like awareness stuff, like what is it? And then getting to like benefits or like value propositions or how it can help a business, getting down to the consideration stage. So like case studies or like how one company did this to get to there. And really looking at all the different user intents that exist around a topic and creating a piece of content that will fit for each type of intent that's in search. And then, some of the articles that go in those topic clusters, they may not be SEO powerhouses, but they answer really critical questions that someone who does click on a big SEO article will link to internally and then convert. So it's about taking that top of funnel interest and getting it down to essentially a white paper or an ebook or something that's gonna give me their email or schedule a time to talk to sales.
I totally agree with you. One thing I think about is, and we try and educate our team on as well, is you're right that sometimes there's like surface level thinking of like defining what is content marketing or something like that, and you just solve that. But in essence, with a lot of these things, of what is cloud computing, it seems like Google wants to not just answer the query, but answer the problem. So you should answer the problem, and you can do that by starting by answering the query, but also push them through the problem, that does two things. Hopefully it helps you rank better, but also helps you drive a conversion at the end of the day. So how do you work with companies to like, does it's like that ebook design, not the design stage, but I'm curious how you think about how companies think about that. Like, are you building an ebook by asset almost always? Are certain like conversion elements working better? I don't know if you're defining that for companies or someone else is doing that, but how do you think about aligning like that? I think it's content upgrade is how Brian Dean defines it, I think, but
Totally.
the email grabber, basically.
So for every topic cluster that I launch, if one doesn't exist, I try and create a topically related demand gen asset. So I just launched a piece with the client yesterday, and the topic was Chaos Monkey, and it's a piece of open source software. And if you go to that asset, the call to action is to download that PDF entirely. It's a massive asset. It would take 2 hours to read the whole thing. It has tutorials on how to do Chaos Monkey on AWS on it. It would be a really big investment in time to read the whole thing. So it just makes sense to opt in there. But I think where you can get a little lazy is like, well, we have this like one white paper that's just like kind of covers what we do. No one wants that. They want to answer the questions. Like content is all about right time, right place. So if you're like, oh, this is our really good converting lead magnet, it may not work for that topic of content. So having something that corresponds to the bigger issue that people are searching for, that's like, hey, if you opt into this, we can solve your problem. Or like you may get more answers to your problems that you don't even know you have. I find has a much higher success rate than just like, here's our book about whatever, something that we just published.
Yeah, that makes sense. So on that specific guide, did you say that just because it was so massive, you had a PDF version of the guide and that was kind of the opt-in? And is that something you would generally recommend if people are building a big guide, just have a PDF download version of it?
I do like that. It really depends on the guide itself. Like that was like a really complete guide where I think like if they wanted to, they could print that out and make like a print version, give it out at conferences. For some stuff, I think actually pushing people deeper, like if it was a guide about, like if it was a post on like selecting tools or anything, like something more down funnel, having like a buyer's guide that was like very in depth that people would actually like opt in for, because let's be honest, like a lot of people are like, they know if they give you an email, they're gonna get a call from sales, or they're gonna get an email from sales telling them like, I'd love to have a meeting with you, and they don't want to opt into that. So if it's just the whole guide, there's a lot of people out there that are gonna be like, I don't know. But if it's something that is unique value that isn't out there for free, and like not everyone knows to search for file type PDF and look for the asset that they want in Google.
That makes sense.
So yeah, I think unique value through gated content can help generate leads off of topical content. I know that forums are controversial right now. Some people are like bigger on chat. I think there's different types of buyers. I think people that have really technical questions will get involved with chat and like intercom and those types of tools, or drift. I think some people, I don't necessarily want to talk to sales immediately. I like getting a form and getting my ebook, reading what I need to know. Like I just downloaded an ebook about tax stuff, and it was like very helpful. Gave me the information I need to know. Did not need to talk to sales at all about it. But it was unique value that wasn't available to me online. So I think that forums definitely have a place, and like getting a guide that isn't publicly available, that's topically related to the content you're creating, can help really put leads in the CRM as opposed to just like visits in Google Analytics.
One thing I thought about what you're saying that as well, and I think I saw the Chaos Monkey asset. You showed it to me yesterday, which looks great, by the way. And one of the things I think it just ask for an email. I mean, I've seen lots of different B2B experiences where it's like ask for an email, or sometimes they'll ask for first name, last name, so business size, et cetera. What is your thought process there? What should companies think about? Should they just be grabbing the email? Should they ask for 4 things? What's the context?
Great question. I'm a huge fan of progressive profiling with marketing automation tools. So like first thing, like just get that email, and then like, or a name is great too, because like then you can personalize email conversations more. But you can use stuff like Clearbit to essentially get their name once you get their email.
Gotcha.
So just getting the email can unlock their identity, and most of the time you can figure out someone's name from their email alone. So, but like Clearbit or something like that when you're at scale. But progressive profiling is awesome. Like you can ask someone like, hey, you can send them an email like, hey, we've got custom types of content for companies of different sizes. Are you 1 to 100, 100 to 250, 250 to 500, 1,000 plus employees? And then they click on that, and then you cookie them as that. So it's like you ask them questions over time instead of being like, can you answer our 15 questions right now? You can always progressively profile users. So I like building up information over time rather than just like going for a home run on the first date.
What was the tool you said that did that, or is it most marketing
That's
automation?
most marketing
does it?
automation tools, yeah.
Gotcha, nice. So an interesting thing we were talking about a potential client or potential clients you get in the funnel conversation is sometimes some startups, or they might think they have a novel solution, and maybe they do, but they don't always have bottom funnel search volume available to them, or at least not immediately. People aren't even aware it's a problem necessarily. How do those companies think about content marketing and making it work for them, and if at all, or is there a way of validating that those companies don't even have demand through SEO or in general? But I'm curious your thoughts in general about
yeah. I mean, I think if you don't have bottom of the funnel search volume, that's tough. And like I've made the mistake of focusing on bottom of the funnel search. I was thinking like, well, we should own it, because when people do search for it, we should be there. I found that alternative pages are much more valuable to go for, like trying to rank for someone's brand or using PPC to bid on someone's brand when they're looking for comparative solutions. Is much more effective than like trying to hone in on like sifting through mud to find like the few pieces of gold and bottom of the funnel intent. In B2B, bidding on competitor names and creating pages for competitor names is the fastest way I've seen revenue growth. I'd say a lot of people.
So they all. Sorry to interrupt you, but all right. So those are all companies that don't really have bottom funnel, but it must be a big enough market that there's a lot of competitors there. That's kind of interesting to me.
For sure, but like no one searches for cloud-based storage solutions. They search for Dropbox.
Yeah, okay.
So,
that makes sense.
Yeah, no one types in cloud storage. Like they know, especially if it's like a bigger solution, especially if it's like a little consumery, which like Dropbox was at first. I think because. Yeah, I really don't think people are searching for cloud storage when they are like consumer cloud storage or personal cloud storage.
Yeah,
it's just a brand
number.
they know.
Yeah, that's true.
And so brands have generally some pretty significant search volume if they're funded and if they have an active customer base, they've got people looking for alternatives. So that's where I would go. But there's a big question to ask yourself there. If like you're a marketer looking at taking a job, if no one is searching for your product, like I do hate boiling everything down to SEO. But like Google does that zeitgeist thing because it is like the intent of the internet, and the internet is everything. And if no one has the intent to purchase your product online and your solution's been around for a while, that's really concerning. Why is it like, what are you going to change about the market? And I think a really good example of that is Drift. I don't work with them. I think they have a great brand. Live chat is so boring. Like it was a stale category, and they've really reinvigorated it. And I don't think a lot of people search for chat. I think a lot of people search for Drift. So I think like when you have that issue, and like now a smaller company can come steal some of Drift's market share by bidding on their brand and trying to rank for their terms and Drift alternatives. And I think that may be a better path to revenue than like trying to figure out non-branded keywords that are going to convert. At least for me, when I was working in the sales enablement space, non-branded keywords were about like $35 to $32 a click, because the contracts could be absolutely huge in the upper end of the market, and the big players, they basically set the market with how much they want to bid.
Right.
So for us, bidding on competitor names, that was like $4 or $5. It was way more effective.
And what did that convert at, Jeremy?
High. I don't want to get into the exact numbers, but my goals were double-digit conversion rates.
Okay.
So, and I am able to hit that with clients now.
And able to hit that, okay. So on that alternative conversation, one thing I think that's interesting there, and I'm curious what your normal client approach is the dynamic of it's not always straightforward not always do you want to just have a drop down that says like Dropbox alternatives on your nav of your cloud storage solution, because you'll be now introducing people to Dropbox even though they already know that. But also, I do think a lot of people that are searching Dropbox alternatives want a third-party opinion rather than a first-party opinion, because obviously that's biased. It's like, yeah, we're an alternative, but are we actually a good alternative versus like softwareadvice.com, which does third-party context there. So would you suggest people approach ranking for those alternative or versus keywords in software?
So if you have like power player affiliates that rank really well, I used to work in WordPress hosting and managed an affiliate program in WordPress hosting, and we would work with our affiliates to rank for the terms we wanted them to rank for and like improve their search results because it was net benefit for us. So working with those third parties and helping them rank better is always
Win-win.
win-win. But with the alternative pages, I get that you don't want to have in the nav. I would push for the footer. And that's where I have them with one client right now.
Okay.
And like those things.
I've seen them in the nav. I found it kind of weird when I saw it in the nav. But
In the top
sense.
nav.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wouldn't do that. But I mean, no one in this world doesn't know they have alternatives.
Yeah,
Everyone
that's
knows
fair.
they have alternatives. And I mean, I'm not going to push people to those pages, but I do want them to be internally linked and I want them in text well. I think, like, I have one client right now that is ranking on page 1 for clients' brand names, no modifiers. And those do absurdly well. Like, I don't want to take them out of the footer. I'd much rather rank for, and just the amount of mind share we get to be like number 4 for someone's brand name, so that whenever people search for that, they see us as like the title tag is a better alternative to product name.
Ranking for someone's brand name?
Yeah.
Wow, that's impressive.
I don't know how we're doing it. I really do think it goes back to topical authority, and we are the most topically authoritative site on online courses, and that client is, and these pages are all online course providers. So I think Google's transferring some authority there because we haven't built a lot of links to those pages, but they are doing quite well.
So I know one of your approaches with content marketing and just content building in general is using approaches like and tools like MarketMuse and TF-IDF and things like that. There's definitely multiple modes of thought in the SEO world. I've heard Joe Hall counter some people that just love TF-IDF, and some people love it, some people hate it. And I know that you like it, you use it a lot, but maybe you can speak to how, or maybe I'm speaking out of turn, but curious, your opinion, how are you utilizing that? How should people utilize that, if at all? What are your thoughts on that process?
Okay. So I would first say, like, I think TF-IDF is like a good way to bring people into the conversation about it, but I think the actual like term frequency, inverse document frequency results are pretty crude. Like, you can do stuff like 2-word combinations, 3-word combinations, but at the end of the day, TF-IDF doesn't understand any semantics. It's just matching words to words.
Okay.
And same with like LSI, and there's also LDA, which are like, they're all like LDA is like way better results than TF-IDF, but they're all still like really crude ways to look at content. I do use MarketMuse pretty heavily. They are not like one single TF-IDF or LDA thing. It's a proprietary thing that they do, but it's at its core, it's like natural language processing. I'd say where they're pretty different is they actually understand like meaning of words. So like they will group like dog, puppy, canine in a cluster, and then like, you know, leash, rope, whatever, and they understand how words actually mean. One way to do that is like I was talking to their team, like Mercury, like, is it the god? Is it the planet? Is it the stuff that's inside of a thermometer? And the way you do that is by understanding the words around it.
Okay.
So it's definitely like a much more advanced form of natural language processing. But yeah, I'm a huge fan of it when it comes to building out content, because I mean, what they're looking at is everything else that's ranking, and they're essentially telling me this is all the stuff people are talking about. And when time is really a factor for me, not having to read 100 articles about my client's industry when I'm trying to start work is really helpful. And I can assign those articles and tell people what they need to write and show them what they've missed without becoming an expert myself.
So in your process there, are you, just in terms of workflow, one of the thought processes we've had internally is like, does introducing, you need to include these words kind of ruin the creative process? So curious, like, are you giving the writer those terms up front? Are you basically taking their article after the fact and putting them in, or what would be your recommended method there?
So I do it before, but everything's directional. Like, there's no, like, I feel like everyone is always looking for these cut and dry tactics that just like work, and it's just like a system that you follow to get repeatable success. And like, if you've been doing this long enough, we all know that's not true. So in terms of giving someone those topics or keywords ahead of time, I totally get the hesitancy to shy away from that, especially with like SEO copywriting on Olance and eDesk and Upwork. People have gotten a lot of bad results in like keyword mash stuff. I'd say I generally work with in-house writing teams and get them to create SEO content that performs. So they have a lot of expertise. So they're not gonna force a bunch of keywords in an article that don't make sense. I try and use subtopics as a directional guide. Like, do you need to hit every one? No, but the people that talk about this mention these things. So is it a conscious decision to leave this out? So if I was writing, the ultimate guide to Apple computers and they never mentioned iPhone, Steve Jobs, or Apple E2, that would be a problem, and I would want to know why they didn't. And I think also, if you think about Google's perspective, we know if you look at like the TensorFlow documents that they are doing natural language processing with their own technology. They want to send you to something comprehensive. They don't want to send you to something that has a bunch of knowledge gaps. So I think they want to reward comprehensive content, and I do think, I have no like crazy data science studies to prove this, but I do think comprehensiveness is a measurement of content quality, and the more comprehensive your article is, the better Google's going to see it. I don't think they're spending all this time learning topic modeling for no reason at all.
So yesterday you were telling me about something MarketMuse does, that they can export a brief that potentially hands off to writers. Is that something you utilize, or does it take everything, you got to add some detail to it?
I've utilized those in the past. Generally, I'd say so like AI, everyone's like AI is going to replace us, or like AI can't. The one thing AI doesn't have is editorial point of view, and it doesn't understand your product. A really good example is when I was working with my client, Podia, in the online course space. When we were running all the topic modeling, it kept suggesting WordPress, and Podia isn't WordPress. But a lot of the people that talk about creating memberships or selling online courses, they're talking about WordPress. So the AI is going to suggest that because AI wants to make you more of what else is out there. So we have to make conscious business decisions to not just talk about WordPress in these articles. So I think there is a layer of essentially not like SEO stuff, but like business acumen. And that's actually what I really like about MarketMuse, is like I'm spending less time being like, cross your I's and dot your T's of SEO tactics and best practices, and I'm like, here's how we're going to get these visits into the funnel. And it allows me to spend less time worrying about how we're going to rank and more about what to do with that traffic that's coming in.
Mm-hmm. So I know there weren't one offering there. I've heard of Write before. I've used that for a little bit. Is that your recommended tool? Like, putting it back for the listeners, should they all be signing up for MarketMuse? What is the context where someone should be using that? Is it for everyone?
I don't think it's for everyone. I think it's for larger teams. I think it is for people that work with a lot of writers. It's definitely a content planning solution, and it definitely has it takes over the workflow in certain instances. So it's for someone that has a content production team that wants to infuse SEO into what they're doing. There's a lot of other tools that do some pretty helpful stuff. There's free tools. SEMrush has a topic tool. If you ever use that, I think it's pretty good. It's not. I don't think it's as comprehensive as what MarketMuse is doing, but I've been impressed with it. There's ClearScope, which is a much cheaper solution, and I've looked at that one as well. Personally, for me, I published that Chaos Monkey piece with my client 24 hours ago using MarketMuse data, and it's ranking at number 6 now. I have been able to get very similar results with their data, so. If I'm able to provide ranking, if it's something's going to help me rank in 12 hours, I'm going to keep using it. Yeah. And I mean, we're talking like, we're not optimizing content, we're not building links, we're launching really big, comprehensive pieces of content, and then we're promoting it to active communities and email lists, maybe some newsletters. Mm-hmm. But I'd say the stuff's not really link bait. It's more like comprehensive guides that walk people through a purchase journey. They are what people go kind of crazy about, but it's not like, we're not going to get 5,000 shares on LinkedIn or whatever.
So the goal for an asset like that, are you probably linking to it as an evergreen thing in the nav, or potentially prominently in the architecture?
It's interesting because a lot of my clients are on like Netlify and Webflow app, and it's not always easy just to be like, let's add it to like this like series of content, or like let's stick it on this in like this section of the site. So that's something that I would like to have those in the footers. I'd like to have them referenced in blog posts. But yeah, we do go for like the most relevant links possible. And a lot of times those linkable markets aren't very big, but we are trying to get like the 15 links that matter.
Gotcha. Which kind of ties into next thing I want to ask you about is what should be people's link building approach in SaaS, and what is your approach, and what have you found successful, and what do you recommend for others?
Good question.
I
I have some hot takes on this one.
Oh, wow.
I got my start in link building, and I think I'm pretty direct. I knew how to write emails that would get me links back in like 08, 09. And I did a lot of manual link building and link buying and guest posting. And scholarships,
Just
sponsorships.
sound impressed.
Yeah, I just don't think it added a lot of business value. At the time, I did think it improved rankings, but I now really focus more on like audience development rather than like just what sites could potentially link to us. So, like there's probably 40 people that have huge followings online that talk about online courses. For my online course client Podia, like that's where I want links. And there is like the low-hanging fruit stuff, like people that write blog posts about like, here's the 5 tools you can do to do this, and like there's a bunch of solutions. We're gonna link to those, and like those are more like link reclamation, or like asking for a link. That makes sense, especially if competitors are mentioned. But I'm not necessarily going to be like, let's go find a way to make this relevant to veterans, or like let's go find a way to make this relevant to like a sub community. I really want to find the way to make this relevant to the people that are going to buy the product. Mm-hmm. And I want people who have an audience of people that are going to buy the product to link to us. So I really want that referral traffic to convert, and not just raise those rankings. Links are so expensive too. Like I don't really think it makes sense to like, it comes out to like, depending on how well you can generate links, like 180 to 500 to more per link. So I think if you're going to invest that much money, you might as well invest it in the audience that's going to be buying the stuff too.
Okay.
That does not make sense for B2C. That is like a purely B2B play. I think for B2C, if it's a consumer product, just about any audience can probably use it. If it's like a consumer packaged good, so just about any audience makes sense. Mm-hmm. But for B2B, like I want an audience of people that have budget. I don't just, it's like, oh, marketers, but they're all freelancers and they don't want to spend over $200 a month on a tool. That's not going to be relevant.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, I see the value in still relevant, but maybe it's not going to drive a ton of sales directly, but indirectly from lifting the page. Mm-hmm. Through still an interested, not like saying go get scholarship or veterans links for your Chaos Monkey site. That doesn't make sense to me. But there is a large network of potentially business-minded sites. Of course, the kind of people who might invest in Chaos Monkey is a very probably niche CTO type group or CSO kind of
site
setup.
Reliability engineers.
Okay, there you find it. And yeah, that makes sense. I think that's a good approach, especially if you're trying to find. It sounds like just generally your consulting philosophy is like highest leverage things. It sounds like you're pursuing the highest leverage things in terms of market muse, link building that's really going to push real sales in terms of what you do. It makes sense also to me at scale to add a layer to that to continue to build on what you're doing.
So we get and also like out of those, so I will build like essentially like a matrix of influencers and people that have relevant links. Some of those people might be affiliates. Some of those people might be not affiliates. I will link over. But we will, I'll recommend guest posting on that site if that's the most relevant tactic. And I think you can use guest posts very strategically to get links to pages that won't easily be linked to, and that's what you should use those for. But I definitely want to, there's definitely layers to add on there, but I think it always needs to be relevant into the product. And I just, as a guy who's made a lot of infographics that did pretty well, I had a hard time correlating to the sales, especially when I was, as I sacrificed product relevance for audience. I found that I think they added less value over time. It's hard. I didn't have like attribution tracking at the time, but I questioned the value of like very off-topic infographics that I created.
Oh, I agree. I think in general, everyone should be doing something that they should be good marketing at the same time. Some of the work, a good amount of the work we're doing is like definitely the primary KPI is going to be links in some ways. But if I ever see something and I'm like, this is not in front of their audience. It's bad marketing at its core. Even if it's can't drive any secondary KPIs, I feel like that's a waste of time, and also more likely to drive less value from the first part because it's off topic. So if you're not even don't have the chance for the secondary KPI, there's an argument that actually your primary KPI is not driving any value either. So I'm totally on board with you there. So in SaaS, actually back on the subject you mentioned, I used to consult for a big B2B software third lead gen site. There's only a few of them now today, but basically because they've all been
Gartner likes them.
Gartner likes them. Yes, they bought a lot of them, so you probably know you've got one of those is one of the ones we consulted for. But they basically took that approach. They had a giant link building team of like reaching out to these niche communities of whether it was like construction software. There were like 20 sites there probably in construction. There's not an audience of veterans to reach out to, but they're highly qualified. They did create content that had some shareable assets built into it, but they would get links back to their research, even if it was very niche, and probably was a very high cost per link for them, but it was relevant. I don't know if it drove direct sales, but they managed to get category links to it.
For sure. I mean, I think that's really important because so much of the link building I used to do was like to either the homepage or to an asset. And to be able to get links to a page that people search for and convert on is just so huge. And I'm pretty familiar with that industry of because I bought leads from them before. They're great, like the Capteras, the G2 crowds, the software advices of the world. If I remember correctly, a lot of those sites used to use like tabbed content where they would have like these big studies, but the front of it was just one of those ladders that converts like crazy. Interestingly enough, my theory on those sites is because they're so comprehensive and mention every provider in the space, they rank very well. Not just because of links, but because they are so comprehensive. And if you are looking for like best software tools, that is the perfect query to land on. I want to understand the entire market. And that's why I think it's really hard to rank for some of those like direct response conversion software terms now, because G2 Crowd or Captera or Software Advice actually is a better experience rather than this like biased vendor site.
Yeah, that makes sense. Kind of an extra layer or side topic on that is just the idea of sales assisted SaaS versus self-signup SaaS. Like, is there a difference in approach there in terms of how people should be doing content marketing, or how should those different business types approach things?
For sure. So there's actually like three different setups you can have, and Stelly FD from Close.io broke this down really well. But there's like sign up only SaaS, and that's like Buffer. Like, I don't think you can talk to a sales team at Buffer. Maybe you can, but like generally it's just like you get it and you're good to go.
Just
or like
social media team, maybe.
Maybe. But like I'm trying to think of products where essentially like you just put in your credit card, you're good to go. Then there's the sales assisted stuff where it's like you can do that, or you can talk to sales. And when I worked at WP Engine, that's what the setup was. We tried to funnel down market people to put in their credit card, tried to funnel up market people to talk to sales so they can get into an annual contract. And then you have like sales only, and that's like my client Gremlin. Like it is an infrastructure tool. You cannot set it up on your own. It can get set up very quickly, but they're gonna need to talk to you and they're gonna have to do custom pricing. It's not just a one size fits all solution, and it's an investment. And so I think for things that are really expensive, you should have salespeople and annual contracts so you don't get bad customers on the platform that churn immediately. You want customer support focusing on the good guys. So I know, especially SEOs hate talking to sales. So there is a time and a place for that type of tactic. But really, I think one of the best ways to do that is with live chat. Is to answer people's questions, and then once they signal that they're down market, essentially send them to the sign up page. Once they signal that they're up market, get them into a phone call. It's a very different type of content play, essentially because if you have 100% self sign up, or you're offering people the ability to sign up for the product themselves, you need content that goes all the way to decision and like what to do with it. And I would also recommend customer success and evangelism content, like once they get on the platform, how to be more successful on it. Because when you buy a big fancy piece of software, you're gonna get dedicated customer support that's gonna make sure and meet with you that you're doing well, because they don't want to lose the account. Self-sign-up, they don't have time for that. So sending people content on how to use it, how to get into the product, problems that it solves, really focusing on that and just shooting people into the product as best as possible. It works.
Better LTV.
Oh yeah. If you, it just like that's if you are working on a business where people can put in their credit card and start working with the product, like your content needs to be sending people into the product. And I'd say like that is more likely going to be like a prolific content business, like a Buffer or a Zapier. Whereas going back to Gremlin, like there is not that much content they need to create. There's probably there's definitely like more content that we will create together, but the idea that they're going to need like 600 blog posts over the year to cover their topic is it's just
ridiculous.
not the same. But that's why those self-signup businesses, they need like traffic so directly correlates to with the lower LTV. It directly correlates to business success. So getting lots of traffic, having high volume content marketing makes a lot more sense
For them.
Yeah.
That makes sense. So kind of wrapping things up, this has been great. I think a lot of good tips on SaaS and B2B, B2C, et cetera. What would just to give some people something meaty to use, your favorite, something you're thinking about today that is especially interesting or useful, tactical, that people can implement, a tool, tips, a software you're using? We talked about MarketMuse, anything else?
Yeah.
What would you leave people with?
Okay. This is like such a basic tip. It's no tools at all. I think intent and like user goals is probably becoming like one of the most important things to rank right now. And if you want to understand the dominant intents in a category, whatever your main keyword is, the most head keyword, type that into Google. And then you're going to get like a definition of what is, but Google understands what is deeper content. And on like second half of page 1, page 2, it's going to be a smattering of different types of intents that they're trying to match with. Those are the dominant intents in the space. Those are the biggest search for things in the space from what I've seen. So if you're gonna, I know I really like the term Brian Dean used on the last one, same but different.
Okay.
If you were gonna some content, like right out the gate, it would be the intents that are not what is gonna be the first thing, but the deeper intents that are ranking just below the what is content and on page 2 and on page 3, those are the dominant intents in the space that Google's trying to surface. When people scroll past, they're like, I already know what it is. Let's go a little deeper. That's what I'm seeing as like the great intent finds.
So you're saying if you're building, kind of how we define that in-house is like, I tell people 2 to 3 word jargon terms. It's like industry jargon, could be content marketing, SEO, chaos monkey, all these terms. They're almost always, they're gonna have, I totally agree with you, it'll be like what is, definitional, ranking probably 4 out of the 5 top slots. And then an example, I think even on what is content marketing, you might find content marketing tools in that secondary slot they're talking about. So are you recommending that people build that what is content marketing page and then they slot in content marketing tools at the bottom of it? Like what is that in practice?
I would just know that like that's a necessary subtopic, and it's something that I would want to create content for. But I know like when people I think that when people search for that content, essentially the thing they're searching for right after that is going to be tools, or a lot of times what I see is jobs in like I work with like a lot of like cloud tech companies, so a lot of people are looking for engineering jobs. So whenever I search in those broad terms, it's like Indeed might rank, and that's like, oh, a lot of employment stuff here, and I know that's like something to stay away from. So I really try and find what are those dominant intents that I can find in the broad SERPs.
Okay, that makes sense. Well, yeah, thanks for coming in, John-Henry. It's been great. I think a lot of great tips on SaaS. And if you like this, please give us a thumbs up, subscribe, and let us know what you thought in the comments. Thanks,
Awesome.
John-Henry.
Thanks for having me, Ross.